Now, in America, inflation has hit a 3-year high. Gas prices remain crushingly high, and Trump's disastrous and illegal war with Iran has cost taxpayers $132 billion and counting. I've received visits from constituents whose children are transgender, in which they have told me that they are literally considering leaving America, this country, our country, because Donald Trump and his allies have been waging this campaign to make the country unsafe for them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We all know that authoritarians vilify and scapegoat minorities. It's a great way to distract from corruption, self-enrichment, villainy, and incompetence. Now, in America, inflation has hit a 3-year high. Gas prices remain crushingly high, and Trump's disastrous and illegal war with Iran has cost taxpayers $132 billion and counting. But the failed president, who has already added more than $2 trillion to our national debt, and the tag-along Congress have given up on advancing any policy solutions to the huge ditches that they've dug for our economy. It's a lot easier just to follow the authoritarian playbook. With just 21 session days left before November, the House majority pulls out of its bag of tricks another hopeless bill targeting MAGA's favorite scapegoat, the tiny group of Americans in the transgender community. Here, to be fair, they're only following the directions of their leader, who lost the Strait of Hormuz for safe and free international commerce, but created the Strait of Warm Ooze in Washington, D.C., turning blue water green and the whole executive branch of government into a swamp of corruption and murky waste. Trump told Republicans earlier this year to make targeting the transgender community a central focus of the midterm elections. Not health care, not housing, not bringing down inflation, not climate change, targeting the transgender community for disparagement and ridicule. Does the White House not understand that everybody gets this cruel game? Even though the GOP House already passed a bill to criminalize doctors for providing gender-affirming care, now they're back with H.R. 7651, which creates a federal private right of action to allow federal civil lawsuits against medical providers, doctors, and facilities for providing gender-affirming care to minors, even the most common kinds of gender-affirming care, which have nothing to do with surgery and everything to do with counseling, therapy, and non-invasive treatment. By subjecting providers and facilities to federal civil liability and litigation without regard to the established standards of care in their states, this bill makes a mockery of federalism to effectively impose a national ban on gender-affirming care for minors, with potentially devastating mental, emotional, psychological, and medical consequences for vulnerable young people who need our support, not demonization and ostracism. I've received visits from constituents whose children are transgender, in which they have told me that they are literally considering leaving America, this country, our country, because Donald Trump and his allies have been waging this campaign to make the country unsafe for them. President Trump has attacked the transgender community ever since he got back in office. One of the first executive orders issued directed agency and department heads to take whatever steps possible to end gender-affirming care. Even after a judge blocked enforcement of that order, many federal agencies continued to take steps to implement it. The FBI even posted an Orwellian tweet urging its followers to report hospitals, clinics, and practitioners who provide gender-affirming care to minors. The president has also purged government websites of any reference to transgender people, essentially disappearing hundreds of thousands of Americans. He's issued an executive order directing that Americans serving honorably in the armed forces be summarily discharged for being transgender. He has threatened to defund schools that support trans students, and he's trying to bully schools into banning trans girls from playing sports with other girls, even if there's no objection and even if the school agrees to it. He has ordered transgender women incarcerated in women's facilities to be immediately transferred out and placed in male facilities, putting their safety in jeopardy. The list goes on. Because my colleagues clearly weren't paying attention the last time we debated an anti-transgender bill, let me restate. All major medical associations agree that evidence-based Gender-affirming care is necessary and, in some instances, life-saving for transgender youth. And while my colleagues will once again tell you that there are young people across the country being mutilated by malicious doctors, that's not true. Like all medical care, gender-affirming care is tailored to the age and unique needs of individual patients in consultation with medical doctors, mental health professionals, and of course, in the case of youth seeking care, their parents. Before puberty, no medical treatment is even recommended. The majority of medical experts agree that the standards of care for minors almost never require surgery. A recent study from the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health confirmed that U.S. surgeons are following these guidelines and largely not performing gender-affirming care that includes any surgery on minors. H.R. 7651, however, threatens to leave gender dysphoria completely untreated by subjecting providers to legal liability even for prescribing medications and hormone treatments according to state law, putting young people at risk for depression, anxiety, and suicide. Gender dysphoria is a medical problem. Studies show that the number of transgender people who revert back to living as their sex assigned at birth is rare. In the largest ever survey of transgender Americans, just 9% reported that they'd gone back to living their sex assigned at birth. Of those 9%, their main reason was not they said that they regretted their choice to transition, but rather it was simply too hard and they faced too much hate and discrimination trying to live as their true selves. So here's the key thing. In the rare instances where a doctor or medical professional deviates from the well-established medical standards of care, state laws already provide a remedy for those patients. For example, just earlier this year, a jury in New York awarded a young woman $2 million in damages for a double mastectomy she received as a teenager as part of gender-affirming care that she was undergoing. The plaintiff in the case accused her medical providers of failing to obtain her adequate consent about the risks of the surgery before she agreed to undergo the procedure, and she further claimed that the doctors deviated from the standards of care governing gender-affirming treatment in her state. The namesake of this bill has a pending lawsuit against her medical providers with a trial set for later next year. No one has explained why the states do not have the expertise to guarantee that the rights of patients and families are being protected under their laws. Meantime, on the federal issues actually affecting children across America that can actually do something, the GOP today is basically doing nothing nearly a year after Republicans passed the big ugly law with false promises that cuts to SNAP would not affect vulnerable people. We now know that at least 776,000 children have lost access to food assistance. A stunning 1.5 million children have lost their health insurance over the same period. And yet we're doing nothing about this other than piling on to the criminal law that the majority already passed to throw in now a civil right of action. This administration has fired all 17 members of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, which provides recommendations for immunization schedules in our country. They've dropped the number of recommended childhood vaccines as a measles outbreak ravages huge regions of the country, and they've abandoned a long-running FDA proposal to ban people under 18 from using tanning beds, which are a serious threat to minors. Hundreds of thousands of them across the country, many of whom do not understand the risks associated with tanning. That would be a far better investment of our time and energy at this point than, again, retreading the road that the majority already went down by criminalizing transgender care. H.R. 7651 does nothing to help American kids. It ignores science and interferes with decision-making that should remain between the patient, his or her family, and their healthcare providers, not politicians, much less those of us who come to Washington in Congress. This legislation is just another occasion to demean and scapegoat people and distract all Americans from the real harms being visited on kids because of the disastrous policies of this administration. I urge our colleagues to rethink this, oppose this legislation, and I yield back.